hoping that we've addressed that with you, and I think probably from the way you've approached this subject, you might want to think about some other markets like Chattanooga and Columbia and Tallahassee and those kind of things, but we've sent you those answers, and we're on record as having answered those before.
You asked me one more question and I'm beating the shit out of you.
Randy, I've answered your question. I'm sorry, dear. You know, if you can't get answers, you might want to think about another market. Any other questions? Thank you.
Georgia's special needs children are being denied critical medical care because of unprecedented cuts in the state's Medicaid coverage. 2,000 disabled children have already been thrown out of the system, and now new strict regulations could strand hundreds more without the care they need. CBS 46's Wendy Saltzman investigates Georgia's forgotten children.
We've spent pretty much the majority of the past 7 years in the hospital.
But these children have never walked. These children have never sat up. These children have never talked.
He was 14 weeks early. He was 1 pound 11 ounces. Tiny.
You know, you just enjoy, the simplest things like him walking.
These are the faces behind Georgia's Medicaid system.
God made me special, and in my opinion, if he did that to me, it was for a good reason.
Cameron Ulrich was born with cerebral palsy, a hemorrhage in the brain that causes seizures and lifelong disabilities.
And I have the best family a kid could have.
Aww. Cameron is just one of thousands of Georgia's children whose medical coverage has become a casualty in a battle over budget cuts.
Keep going. Keep going.
You shouldn't be balancing the state's budget on the backs of these medically fragile children.
What's happening to these children and to their families is beyond being cruel.
Like many families, Cameron's has been denied government assistance several times.
That is hard. That is very hard.
We're not waiting for the response from the application. We're just waiting for the denial.
Bill Ruck's son has Down syndrome and leukemia.
It just seems like they don't care.
And Ruck is struggling. His son was also denied.
I think they're just hoping they disappear.
I would have scraped the gold off the gold dome before I would ever have allowed these children to suffer like they're suffering.
Former Georgia Governor Roy Barnes says these budget cuts have been handed down from the very top of Georgia's bureaucracy.
All it takes is one telephone call and one conversation from the governor, and it's changed.
Under Perdue's administration, the number of disabled children eligible for Georgia's Katie Beckett waiver has dropped from 6,500 kids to 4,500 children in just 18 months. That's 2,000 children turned down by Georgia's Medicaid system.
I see it so that.
Now, starting September 1st, Georgia has tightened eligibility restrictions again, making it even more difficult for these same children to receive medical therapy.
I'm estimating at this point, but he said, the governor's office said, you have to cut your base budget by 2%.
Mark Trail, the director for Georgia's Medicaid system, says his office was directed to make cuts to their budget, which included $65 million.
We have to use the resources we have as effectively as possible and serve as many people as possible.
They're looking at strictly numbers. They don't look at the children and the children that they are impacting.
Heidi Moore is an advocate for children with disabilities.
Yeah, we read a book, you're right.
Her son Jacob has Down syndrome. He's undergone 10 surgeries in just the last 6 years. And earlier this month, he was also denied partial coverage for critical therapy.
And by late last year, it became very obvious that the system was out of control. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families have been denied eligibility.
Yeah, well, I think the state has been too rigid and inflexible and, frankly, inhumane.
Senator Edelman says the buck stops at the governor's desk.
The money's there.
And the general consensus is the state will either pay now or pay later.
The last thing we want is for these kids to have to be institutionalized.
Good job.
We requested more than half a dozen interviews with the governor, but Sonny Perdue refused to speak with us at any point about his policy on these Medicaid cuts. If you would like answers from the governor, you can call his office at 404-656-1776 or log on to our website at cbs46.com for more information. I'm Wendy Saltzman, CBS 46 Investigates.